Hi, this is Emily, and here's my presentation about the Dynasties of China. Let's go. First of all, what are dynasties? Well, they are basically bloodlines of a family that rules a country or a kingdom for a really long time. It is hereditary, meaning the throne or the roles are inherited in the family. Usually, when the father, the king, dies, the oldest son gets the power. And it's carried on until someone else overthrows them most of the times. And most dynasties are named after ancient states, like that. An example would be the Song Dynasty. I'll be talking about the 10 dynasties from ancient China: Shang, Zhou, Qing, Han, Sui, Tang. Next, Song, Yuan, Ming, and then the Qing dynasty. Let's start with the Shang dynasty. It's known as the earliest dynasty in recorded history because there's a lot of evidence about that. There is known to be Xia dynasty before that, but there is very little evidence about that. The dynasty was around 1600 BCE to 1046 BCE. According to legend, a tribal chief named Tang defeated the Xia dynasty in 1600 BCE. A tyrant named Jie controlled the Xia dynasty at that time. The battle was known as the Battle of Minsha. The Shang dynasty is located in the Yellow River Valley, which is today's Shaanxi province. During those times, they built really big cities and made strong social class diversions. They also expanded the irrigation systems, which are used for agriculture, basically supplying the land and crops with water by artificial canals and stuff to make fruit crops better. They also monopolized the usage of bronze, and you can see a picture of a bronze sculpture there. And then there is a picture of the Shang Dynasty map, and then a picture of the big city from there. And you can see here the developed writings in Shang Dynasty. The pictures on the left are oracle bones, which are basically fortune-telling paragraphs written on like tortoise shells or ox bones. And that's the Shang lunar calendar at the bottom, the circle thing. Basically, it's a calendar based on the lunar of the year. And that's the picture of Cheng Tang. And then beside that is a picture of a bronze vessel, because bronze was really common there. And then you can see a picture of the ruin of the capital of Shibo, which is Yanxi right now. It's a ruin of the capital city. The people there also believed in the Chinese deity Shangti, who was the greatest ancestor of all of them. And then the Battle of Minshao's picture is there. It's the battle between Cheng Tang and apparently the Xia dynasty. In the bottom, you can see the picture of the bronze axe and then ceramic and jades, because they were really popular in Shang dynasty. The arts are really detailed. And then you can also see the pictures of the ruins from Anyang City, and you can see the skeletons and then the carts and wheels. Anyang is the capital city of Shang dynasty. The royals were also buried in graves like that, and they sacrificed a lot of animals and humans to be in the graves with them. And that's Zhengzhou, which is a city in China right now. That was the Shang dynasty back then. And that's the Confucian temple. Around 1046 BCE, the Shang dynasty fell. Conquerors of the state of Zhou invaded them and defeated them. It was the final king, King Dixin's throne at the time. He was considered evil and cruel, who liked to torture people. Then the Zhou army came in, led by King Wu. Dixin armed hundreds of thousands of slaves, but they all got defeated. The battle was known as the Battle of Muye. Some even joined the Zhou side. Later, Dixin committed suicide by setting his own palace on fire. Then it was the Zhou dynasty's time. That's the picture of King Dixin, and then that was an art of the Battle of Muye. And then the picture at the right is King Wu of Zhou. Zhou dynasty was known as the longest lasting dynasty. It lasted over 800 years, starting from around 1046 BCE until 256 BCE. There were two parts of Zhou. Western Zhou, which was from 1046 BCE until 771 BCE, and then the Eastern Zhou, which was 770 BCE up to 256 BCE. It was located in what today is Shaanxi province, Xi'an, and near the Wei River. The Eastern Zhou was located in Liuyang. Xi'an was the Western Zhou's capital, and then Liuyang was the Eastern Zhou's capital. The picture shows the map of the Eastern Zhou and then the Zhou dynasty. And then the picture is King Wu's picture. There was a new political order where the emperor was at the top of the system, and then there was the loyal feudal lords, and then the military service, the lords, and then below the lords are peasants. Then around 771 BCE, the lords became less loyal, and then the political system broke down, and invaders attacked the capital, and then that was the Western Zhou. Then there was a period of disorder and chaos called the Warring States period from 475 BCE until 221 BCE. Eastern Zhou started in 770 BCE, and then it was also subdivided into the Spring and Autumn period, 770 until 476 BCE. King Wu conquered the Shang dynasty, and then he became the emperor of the Zhou dynasty. He is Emperor Wu. They believed in the mandate of heavens, which was the idea that heaven chose China's ruler. And those are the 5 leaders of Spring and Autumn period, known as Chengqiu Wuba. During that period, there were a lot of conflict and battles and civil war and sort of violence. The Zhous invented a lot of great things, such as the bronze chopstick, shown right there. Trades thrived and art and philosophy flourished. Look at the example, the decorated wood bowl, which had amazing details, and then the ceremonial bronze bowl. Even bricks and roof tiles were also created. In Zhou dynasty, copper coins were even invented, and they were probably the first coins. Confucianism was also created by Confucius. It's the philosophy that uses the idea that one would want a peaceful, right, and just society to live in, and the teachings express how. Taoism also became a thing. It's a philosophy based on the writings of Lao Tzu, favoring humility and religious obedience. The yin and yang symbol represents the duality of good and bad. In 256 BCE, when the Qin army conquered the city of Chenzhou, the last king, King Nan of Zhou dynasty, was killed. Then comes the Qin dynasty. The Qin dynasty lasted from 221 BCE to 207 BCE, which was pretty short compared to the previous dynasties. In 221 BCE, a king from Qin unified all of China under his control. That king's name is Shi Huangdi, and the name means first emperor. The region of Qin was located in modern-day Shaanxi province, north of the Zhou dynasty territory. Its capital was Shangjiang, and it expanded as the Qin dominated. The king was really into immortality, and he had a counselor named Liu Shang who was a sorcerer. He secretly traveled through tunnels and lived in secret locations to make communicating with immortals easier. He was really into immortality that he even tried to find the elixir of immortality, which is basically a drink that gives the consumer a longevity. Those are pictures of the Qin dynasty territory, picture of Qin Shi Huangdi, and a picture of the Xianyang Palace. He also believed in the afterlife, so he wanted a gigantic city-sized mausoleum with thousands of terracotta soldiers to protect him in the afterlife. Terracotta is basically clay. And those are the pictures of the mausoleum that Qin Shi Huang used over 700,000 workers to create at the foot of the Lishan Mountain. It's basically his tomb. The whole thing includes temples, huge chambers, halls, bronze sculptures, animal burial grounds, and a replica of the royal armory and terracotta statues of government officials. So those are pictures of what the terracotta army looks like. It was discovered, and that's a close-up picture of one of the soldiers. The whole mausoleum is really big, but they still haven't found Qin Shi Huangdi's own tomb. But even if they did, the China government have to agree to open the tomb, which they still haven't because of the lack of technology. The mausoleum and the whole thing was discovered in Shaanxi province. You can even go see it. Not only the mausoleum was built in the Qin Dynasty, but also the famous Great Wall of China was built in the Qin Dynasty. Records say that around 300,000 workers and 500,000 common people worked on it, and thousands of people died, and some were even buried within the wall. The Great Wall did not finish in the Qin Dynasty, though. There were also other things invented in the Qin Dynasty, such as the multiplication table shown there, and then also coins, like that picture. But the king lacked in education. He ordered all books should be burned because he thought they were all useless. The king also refused to share power with anyone. And the productivity of farming improved, and he also built roads and canals. He even standardized the system of weights and measurements. Legalism was also founded in the dynasty. It's a belief that people are more likely to do wrong than right because they're motivated entirely by self-interest. It was developed by philosopher Han Feizi, and that statue is a statue of Han Feizi. In only 17 years, the Qin dynasty established a lot of things. Qin Shi Huang then died in 210 BCE. In 2 years, the empire rebelled against the emperor, and then the Han dynasty came in. The Han dynasty ruled China from 206 BCE to 220 CE. First off, it's also located in today's Xi'an in China. Its capital was Chang, and it was established along the Wei rivers by Liu Bang. He's a peasant who became an emperor. He led the revolt against the Qin dynasty, and after years of fighting, his army finally won control, and he became the first emperor of the Han dynasty. He was a good emperor who had his people's loyalty and trust. He lowered taxes for farmers and made punishments less harsh for them. He set up a government structure that built on the base begun by the Qin. His name became Emperor Gaozu after he got the throne. And that's a picture of Emperor Gaozu right there. After he died, Empress Luzi, his wife, tried to take control. She murdered a lot of people so her family would remain on the throne. The power struggle lasted for 15 years until one of Gaozu's sons slaughtered Luzi's whole family. He was Emperor Wan. Then Emperor Wudi came in power in 140 BCE. He wanted a stronger government, so he took lands from the lords, raised taxes, and put supply of grain under government's control. The picture at the bottom is Lady Liu Ji, and then the picture at the top is Liu Bang and the map of Han Dynasty. There is the picture of Emperor Wudi, and he revived Confucianism and even made it China's official government philosophy. He even created a university to teach the 5 classics of Confucianism and more named Taikshui, and that's the picture of the university. Thousands of students studied there, but exams were only open for people who had been recommended for government service, service, basically just rich and influential people. In the Han Dynasty, families were really important, so they studied about honoring families and Confucianism. Children were taught to respect their elders, and everyone had to obey and respect their parents, even the emperors. Confucius also taught that the father was the head of the family and that he had absolute power, and everyone in the family had to obey him. They also continued building the Great Wall of China in Han Dynasty, and there is the map of how they built it there. Art and literature thrived in the Han Dynasty. They even invented a seismograph to predict earthquakes, and the levers inside caused the ball to drop into one of the toad's mouth, and it tells the direction of the earthquake. The doctors also studied the human body and used acupuncture to heal people. Acupuncture is basically needles, and these sculptures and artworks became more and more advanced. You can see the thorough details in the artwork and how they sculpted the curved lines. And arts and paintings were also very excellent. They knew how to draw figures very well, and you can see those figures in the picture look well done. The Hans were also known for their poetry. There, they also invented the sundial, of the device that uses the position of shadows cast by the sun to tell the time of the day. And paper was also invented. In 138 BCE, Emperor Wu ordered Zhang Qiang to make contacts with tribes to the west. Then he reached an area named Bactria in Afghanistan. There, he saw bamboo and textiles from China and asked how they got there and how he found out that the items came from Shendu, a kingdom in Afghanistan. Then he went back to the emperor 13 years later and told him what happened, and they mapped out a route to send a journey back there. Then the map route was used more and more and became the international trade route known as the Silk Road, which will be used by the dynasties in the future. And a man named Shima Qian created the Grand Scribes Records, which is the first history of China through the dynasties. That's the picture of Shima Qian and a picture of the book, the Grand Scribes Records. Around 189 CE, the Yellow Turbans, a religious cult, tried to start a civil war. And then in 220 CE, the last Han emperor, Emperor Qiang, got dethroned and the Han dynasty came to an end. That's the picture of Emperor Qiang. After the Han dynasty fell apart in 220 CE, China split into a bunch of rival kingdoms ruled by military leaders. This period of disunion lasted from 220 to 581 CE until someone reunited China. He was a northern ruler named Yang Jiang, and he conquered the south, unified China, and created the Sui dynasty in 581 CE. He then later on named himself Emperor Wen. He ruled for 23 years, 581 CE from 600 to 604 CE. He spread Buddhism, and he was a Buddhist. He also started to build the Grand Canal after he made Luoyang his capital. It wasn't finished when he died, unfortunately, in 604 CE. Before Yang Jian became emperor, he had the Great Wall north of his kingdom rebuilt, and after he became emperor, he also rebuilt some other sections of the wall. In 602 CE, he sent an army south to conquer Hanoi in Vietnam. The troops won the battles, but then died from tropical diseases. Emperor Wen also had Confucian officials like the Han Empire. He then died in 604 CE, and people believe his son killed him. And those are the pictures of Emperor Wen, the Grand Canal, the Great Wall, and then the Sui dynasty map. After he died, his son became Emperor Yang in 604 CE. He continued his father's Confucian policies and completed building the Grand Canal. Emperor Yang also built a new capital of Luoyang. He commanded the Great Wall should be rebuilt too, and laborers were forced to extend the part that stretched into Inner Mongolia. Those are the pictures of the Grand Canal, and it's the world's longest canal and artificial river, and it went from Hangzhou across the Yangtze River up until the capital Luoyang. Then he used the canal to send armies to fight against an ancient Korean kingdom named Goguryeo. The Goguryeo troops defeated all the troops of Emperor Yang. In Sui dynasty, there was also the equal field system where land was given to peasants for their lifetime that has previously belonged to strong feudal lords. And that's an artwork of the kingdom Goguryeo defeating the Sui. Since Emperor Wen was the Buddhist, there were a lot of Buddhist art, statues, and temples. That's a picture of a guardian figure from the Sui dynasty and a Buddhist head statue. Although he spread Buddhism, Taoism and Confucianism were also there. Then in 680 CE, after the losses to Goguryeo, there were revolts due to forced labors, heavy taxes, and more. Emperor Yang was later killed by his advisor, Yuan Huaji. Although it was pretty short, it reunited China for the next dynasties to come, like that next one, Tang Dynasty. After the Sui dynasty, next is the Tang Dynasty, considered as a golden age of Chinese arts and cultures by many. The dynasty lasted from 618 CE to 906 CE. It all began when Li Yuan gained power during the rebellion during Emperor Yang's throne. Emperor Yang got killed by his chancellor, and Li Yuan took control and later became Emperor Gaozu and founded the Tang Dynasty. The Tang Dynasty mainly extended from the Korean peninsula to the Tarim Basin and from the Mongolian steppe that's in modern Vietnam's south. The dynasty's territory had the capital city of Cha'an, which is today's Xi'an. During those times, Cha'an was considered the biggest city on earth. That's the main capital. The central capital was Heizhong, modern-day Yangtze, and the eastern capital was Luoyang. As an emperor, Gaozu accomplished a lot of things. He applied the bureaucratic practices that China still uses today. He also created the Tang legal code in 624 CE, and that code was used by the future dynasties, and other countries like Japan, Korea, and Vietnam even copied it. Emperor Gaozu also improved the aristocracy to prevent overtaxing peasant farmers, and he redistributed land parcels. And those are the pictures of the Tang Dynasty map, the Tang legal code, and then Emperor Gaozu. He had a son named Li Shiming, who fought by his side even before the Tang Dynasty was founded. He was rewarded with the position of Duke of Qing, but he needed more. Later, Emperor Gaozu made his older son, Li Jingcheng, his heir, which angered Li Shiming because he put a lot of effort in the Tang Dynasty too. So in 626 CE, he revolted and killed his brothers, including the official heir, and forced his father, Gaozu, to step down. Then he became Emperor Taizong and later executed his rivals, including his father. However, he was a good and effective emperor. He improved the religion. He allowed diverse religions like Christianity and Buddhism to prove themselves in China alongside Confucianism and Taoism. He proved himself a better emperor than his father. He ruled with just and improved his father's accomplishments. Then around 638 CE, Emperor Taizong chose a young concubine named Wu Jiao. She was young and pretty, which got the attention of Taizong's son, Prince Li Ji, but she was still one of Taizong's concubines. When Taizong died in 649 CE, she was sent to a temple to live as a nun forever, but was brought back by her affair, Li Ji, who was now Emperor Gaozong. Wu became Gaozong's concubine, which angered his wife and Lady Wang's and former concubine, Lady Jiao. Legends say Wu murdered her own daughter and framed Lady Wang for that. Then, Emperor Gaozong became weak and she controlled most things in the palace as her place. Then, when he died in 683 CE, she made herself Empress Wu Zishen and changed the name of the dynasty to Zhou for the beginning of a new era. She was a great ruler who improved education, taxation, and government. She later was forced to step down by her son Zhongzong, then died
things got chaotic in the palace
until Shenzong came to power. Under his reign, the Tang dynasty flourished. Buddhism was well known when Emperor Gaozong and Empress Wu ruled, but now Taoism was more promoted by Xuanzang. But Buddhism still spread. A lot of foreign trading happened, and he improved the economy on the Silk Road. He also built temples, complexes, roads, and increased industry. He even built a professional army of veterans to guard borders and reclaim lands. He loved music, poems, and arts. During the Tang dynasty, thousands of poems, plays, short stories, and literature were produced, and woodblock printing became more and more advanced. There were also public libraries with books and calendars. The medicine also became more advanced. The first mechanical clock was invented by a Buddhist monk, Yi Jing, in 725 CE. And those are the pictures of Emperor Taizong, Empress Wu, woodblock printing, Emperor Xuanzang, and the first clock. And the picture in the left bottom is like those theaters and plays. Gunpowder, gas stoves, and aircons were also invented. You can see the pictures of gunpowder and then the air conditioner, what it looked like back then. Things were going great, and Shangzong even created the Imperial Music Academy to influence Chinese music. Then they developed agriculture machines too. And then there was increase in trades, products than before. The Tang was at its peak before Emperor Xuanzang fell in love with his concubine so much that he ignored his duties and placed her family members in high government positions. A general from northern province named An Lushan saw the weakness, and he started a rebellion against the ruling house in 755 CE, and he led over 180,000 of his army against the capital. He overthrew Xuanzang and made himself emperor. Between 755 CE and 763 CE, the country had so many wars, leading around 36 million people to die. The royal army refused to defend Xuanzang unless Lady Yang and her family were executed. Xuanzang had no choice but to agree. And later, he stepped down and gave the throne to his son, Li Hang, Emperor Suzong. But he failed to defeat the rebel forces completely. They both died of an illness in 762 CE. But his son, Li Yu, Emperor Taizong, defeated the An Lushan rebellion in 763 CE. But unfortunately, the country was ruined and warlords ruled different parts of China, and he did not have much authority. Then in 780 CE until 805 CE, Emperor Dezong ruled, and in 806 CE, Emperor Qianzong ruled. He led his own forces against the warlords and stabilized the country. Finally, he gained authority as an emperor. But in 813 CE, revolutions broke out again. There was a huge backlash against Buddhists and their practices, but Qianzong did nothing. Those are the pictures of An Lushan, Xuanzang and Lady Yang, Emperor Taizong, and the battle. In 820 CE, Qianzong died and his son, Muzong, only ruled for 3 years. Then Muzong's son ruled for 2 years. Then his other son, Wenzong, ruled from 826 CE until 840 CE. He was a good emperor who tried his best to stabilize the country. When he died, his brother became emperor and began a government persecution of all religions other than Taoism. Buddhism was strongly criticized. Then Xuanzang II became emperor and ended religious persecutions. He was also a good emperor who tried to bring back the glory of the dynasty until his son Yizong became emperor in 859 CE. He was a bad ruler who put his pleasure first. Then there was the Huang Chao's rebellion that destroyed the capital city of Chang'an. He came in power, then the emperors who followed him were ineffective. The dynasty ended in 907 CE. Then the period of the 5 dynasties and 10 kingdoms followed. And then the Song dynasty starts to rise. Those are the pictures of Emperor Dizong, Emperor Shengzong, Emperor Wuzong, Emperor Yizong, and the Huang Chao's rebellion. After the disorder in China that broke China up into 5 dynasties and 10 kingdoms, the Song dynasty was founded by General Zhao Kuangying in 960 CE. He was named Emperor Taizu. He introduced a rotation system for army leaders. Then his younger brother became Emperor Taizong and reigned from 976 CE until 993 CE. Those two emperors started a stable dynasty for other emperors. Those are the pictures of Emperor Taizu and the map of the Song dynasty. Under the Song dynasty, Confucianism and Buddhism revived. The dynasty was divided into two periods, and the Northern Song 960 CE to 1125 CE, and Southern Song 1125 CE to 1279. Their capital was in the northern city of Bianjing, which is now Kaifeng in modern China. And their territory was in north, near the south of the Yangtze River. In the south, there was a capital named Linian. In the Song dynasty, there were a lot of overworked and overtaxed farmers, though. The politics tried to ease the poor part of the society, but failed. But the economy was thriving. The capital Kaifeng was famous for its printing paper, textile, and porcelain industries. Those items were exported along the Silk Road. Other goods like tea, silk, rice, and copper were exported too. And the cities became more populated, the markets and farms flourished. Farming was efficient, and the crops were worth a lot too. The Chinese economy began to thrive like today, as tradings and partnerships happened a lot. And the world's first paper money was invented by them too. And they also improved gunpowder, lock gates in canals, and printing presses. And literature grew as encyclopedias were written and lots of poetries were established. And those are the pictures of Emperor Taizong, women working on silk, porcelain, really beautiful and detailed porcelain, paper money, farming, and printing presses. One famous female poet was named Li Qingzao. That's her picture right there at the bottom left corner. And there were lots of other famous poets and poems too. Paintings became advanced and landscape paintings were common, such as flower and wildlife paintings. Around the 1100 CE, there were the Jurchen tribe people, the Jin dynasty. The Song and the Jin defeated the Liao together, but the Song was weak in military. So in 1125 CE, the Jin was stronger and they attacked parts of the northern China and captured thousands of people, including Emperor Huizong of Song. The Song dynasty was forced to pay the Jurchen a lot of price, and that was the Northern Song. And those are the pictures of paintings and poems, and including a picture of what the markets would have looked like. And there's a picture of what the Jurchen tribe looked like. Then the Song relocated to Yangtze Valley in 1138 CE, and the Hangzhou capital was established. The Southern Song dynasty then began. But fortunately, the economy was still booming, and even Muslims and Hindus came to live there. In 1127 CE, the Song army made one of Emperor Huizong's sons emperor, who then became Emperor Gaozong. A peace treaty between the Jin and the Song was signed in 1141 CE. Hangzhou flourished, canals and gardens were built everywhere, and they also developed better strategies to help all levels of society. It was a good time in Song dynasty until the Mongols from the north invaded. In 1268 CE, Kublai Khan, the Mongol leader, came to the south. They crossed the Yangtze River in 1275 CE and defeated the Song dynasty and set up a new dynasty called the Yuan dynasty. And those are pictures of Emperor Huizong and Emperor Gaozong and what the Mongol people would have looked like. Now is the Yuan dynasty. It was from 1279 CE up to 1360 CE. And in 1279 CE, Kublai Khan declared himself as the Emperor of China and began the Yuan dynasty. It is the first dynasty in China to be ruled by a foreigner. After the Mongols completely conquered the Song and the last emperor died, Kublai Khan became Emperor Shizu. The Mongols and the Chinese were completely different, so the Chinese did not enjoy the Mongols ruling them, but the emperor did not force the Chinese to live like him. Some Mongols adopted some Chinese cultural aspects like Confucianism. The Mongols also placed heavy taxes for the Chinese, and most of the money went to public works projects that required Chinese laborers. The Yuan dynasty added to the Grand Canal built by the Sui, and they also built new palaces and roads. The Mongols also brought in a large amount of Muslims and others to help them rule because they didn't really trust the Chinese. The Mongols also had their own religious belief called shamanism, and there's a picture of that right there, but the religion did not spread. Instead, Mongols and the other indigenous people began believing in Islam. They also established a new class structure where their Genghis Khan's clan was at the top, then Mongols, then other foreigners, and then Chinese at the bottom. Later, Islam became more popular. During the reign of the Mongols, literature, philosophy, and culture did not bloom as much, but theaters and feasts and parties were really preferred by the Mongols because they liked entertainment a lot. And those are the pictures of shamanism, Emperor Shizu, what the plays and entertainments look like, and the map of the Yuan dynasty. Here's a fun fact. Between 1271 and 1295 CE, the famous Italian Marco Polo traveled in China and the Mongols highly respected him. He also introduced China to Europeans. And in 1280, the Mongols tried to conquer Japan but failed. Then, in 1307 CE, Kublai Khan, Emperor Wuzong, came to power. He only ruled for 4 years, but during his reign, the value of paper currency decreased a lot, and they banned the use of gold and silver currency. Money did not go well when he ruled. Then, from the 1330s, different kinds of natural disasters such as droughts, floods, and epidemics happened. In 1331 CE, the Black Death began and millions of people died. In 1333 CE, Emperor Huizong ruled. Between 1356 and 1367, Zhu Yuanzhang, an important leader of the Red Turban Rebellion, attacked the Yuan capital, Dadu, which is now Beijing. So the Yuan court had to escape to the north. The final place of the Yuans became Mongolia, and the Mongolians tried to recover the empire but failed. And in 1368 CE, Zhu Yuanzhang destroyed the Yuan palaces and founded a new dynasty called the Ming Dynasty. And those pictures are Marco Polo, Emperor Wuzong, Zhu Yuanzhang, the Mongols, Yuan Dynasty Temple, a flag of Japan, and a painting of what Marco Polo described in his writings about China. The Ming Dynasty was from 1368 CE until 1644 CE. Zhu Yuanzhang, aka Emperor Hongwu, was just a peasant, but as he got older, he joined the peasant rebellion and later became the leader of the army. In 1358 CE, his army conquered Nanjing and he made it his capital. And then in 1368 CE, he invaded the Yuan Empire and gained control of Dadu, which is today's Beijing. He became Emperor Hongwu after establishing the Ming Dynasty, and he ruled for 30 years. During his reign, he created a new government structure. In the previous dynasties, Eunuchs were involved in politics, but Emperor Hongwu demoted them from being officials. Instead, people who passed the Neo-Confucian imperial exams were officials, and they were pretty well educated. He was a peasant once, so as an emperor, he tried to be just to the peasants too. He tried to distribute lands to them and allowed people who brought uncultivated land under the cultivation to keep as their property without being taxed. So the lands were cultivated mostly by the end of his reign. Even peasants now had a good amount of money, and the population also increased quickly. He ruled until 1398 CE when he died. Those are the pictures of the map of Ming Dynasty and their territories, a picture of Emperor Hongwu, and porcelain pictures because porcelain was a huge thing back then. Later, his grandson became Emperor Jinwen, but in 1402 CE, Emperor Hongwu's brother revolted against Emperor Jinwen, and he became Emperor Yongle. Until then, the dynasty's capital was in Nanjing, but Emperor Yongle burned down the palace and then moved the capital to Beijing. He also rebuilt the Grand Canal in 1411 CE, and it increased trading in the north. And in the Ming Dynasty, ships and sailing skills were improved. The best sailor of the time was a Muslim eunuch named Zheng He. He was ordered by Emperor Yongle to go around and trade in between 1405 CE to 1433 CE. He and his Muslim sailors went on 7 grand voyages. They sailed as far as Arabia and brought back exotic animals and different kinds of items. The ships were mostly over 300 feet and had 25,000 sailors. He traveled to lots of different places, and presented the leaders of those places with gifts from China, promoting China. Emperor Yongle also built a new capital city in Beijing and named it the Forbidden City because the common people weren't allowed to enter. It is basically a huge complex of around 1,000 buildings in the center of the capital, built for the emperor, his family, his court, and servants. In the Ming Dynasty, the Great Wall of China was also rebuilt. They finished a construction that was going to be well known in history. The walls were more than 2,000 miles long, and there were soldiers who stood guard. It made the Chinese people feel safe. In 1425 CE, a new emperor named Emperor Shangde ruled a peaceful and prosperous period. In 1432, he banned foreign trade and set up schools and courts for eunuchs, so eunuchs were again involved in politics. Then they banned foreign trade, but the Europeans still came to them to trade and teach Christianity in the 1500s. These are the pictures of the Great Wall of China. Look how long it is and imagine the effort it would have took. And then that's the Forbidden City. You can see how fancy the buildings looked because it was for the emperor. And then the pictures below are the arts of how the 7 grand voyages would have looked like. And that's Zheng He taking lead. And then there were so many ships all around. In the 1640s, an ex-soldier named Zhang Qingzhang established another rival rebel base. In 1642, Zhang and a peasant soldier, Li Zizhang, who took control of separate parts of China after all the rebellions and the social disorder. The last Ming emperor committed suicide. Then there was semi-nomadic people called Manchus, and then they conquered Beijing and later established the Qing dynasty. And those are the pictures of Zhang Qianzong, Li Zizhang, and the Manchus. And the last dynasty in my presentation, the Qing dynasty. It is also the last imperial or royal dynasty in history. The Yuan dynasty was the first to be ruled by foreigners, and this is the second. After the Ming dynasty fell and the Han people were relocated from their power, the Manchu from the northeast of the Great Wall came in. Under the Qing dynasty, the territory of the empire grew 3 times and the population increased in millions. It was located in today's China and Mongolia and some parts along Russia. The Manchus were led by Hong Taiji, and when the Qing army occupied the capital, his son, Emperor Shunti, became king after he passed away. So now it was established as the Qing dynasty. In 1645, the Ming men were forced to shave away their hair apart from Manchu-style pigtails. If they refused, they got executed. You can see the only acceptable kinds of hairstyles in the photos I'll be showing next. And that's the picture of the Qing dynasty map, and you can see how big the territory is. And these are the pictures of Hong Taiji, Emperor Shunti, and the Manchus. You can see that some of their hair is shaved off, and those are the only acceptable hairstyles for them, or else if they refused, they got killed. They didn't focus much on the knowledge of the world, but only on imperial examinations, studying ancient philosophical and religious texts. So they had a lack of modern education. The golden age of the Qing dynasty began in 1661 when Emperor Kangxi came to power after Emperor Shunti died. He was the Chinese emperor who ruled the longest. He ruled for 61 years from 1661 until 1722. He was a pretty nice emperor. He reduced taxes and made sure the farmers were favored. During the Qing dynasty, literary was accomplished very commonly, such as encyclopedias and novels. One of those classic novels was called Dream of the Red Chamber. Emperor Kangxi only allowed foreign trade in 4 cities of China: Guangzhou, Xiamen, Songjiang, and Ningbo. However, many goods such as cotton, silk, tea, and ceramics were still exported a lot. And that's the picture of the Dream of the Red Chamber book, a picture of Emperor Kangxi, and a picture of the ceramic vase and silk painting, a painting made of silk. After Emperor Kangxi was Emperor Yongzheng, who continued the prosperous period in 1723. Then in 1735, Emperor Qianlong was the emperor. He also reigned for 61 years. In the beginning of his reign, population grew and the empire also grew as they conquered Tibet and other regions. During the golden age of this dynasty, paintings, porcelain, and jade carvings were really popular. And there's the example of a porcelain vase, which was really beautiful. And then the jade carving. It looked really, really well done. You can tell that so much effort was put into it. And beside it is a painting. And then on top is the Yongzheng emperor. And then on the bottom is the Emperor Qianlong. Music theater traditions also flourished, and there were a lot of instruments like flutes and drums. Emperor Qianlong published over 42,000 poems, and he loved art. Under the Qing reign, homosexuals received harsh penalties, and socials became more conservative. And men wouldn't accept widows as brides most of the times. In 1840, there was a war named Opium War between China and the Great Britain. Opium is a kind of drug. China was forced to give up Hong Kong to the British as negotiation. There was a second war from 1856 to 1860, and opium addictions increased. And that's a picture of the Opium War between the Great Britain and the Chinese, and that was a Confucius temple filled with instruments inside. And then the picture below is a picture of instruments from the Qing dynasty. And then there was a famous rebellion called Taiping Rebellion in 1851 with a man called Hong Qiujuan leading. And there's a picture of that rebellion. That man stood for many good things like banning slavery, torture, opium use, and he wanted more women equality. He then made Nanjing his capital, and his army was planning to attack Beijing, but the Qing army had help from the British and the French. The war went on for 13 years, and 25 million people died. Then there was Empress Dowager Cixi, who ruled behind her young nephew and son. For 46 years, the Qing dynasty went on with her. Finally, the Qing dynasty came to an end in 1911. And that's a photo of the Empress Cixi. From 1899 to 1901, there was the Boxer Rebellion that wanted to overthrow the government and kill foreigners, but then it became an anti-Christian movement. Foreign armies defeated the Qing troops and the Boxers. After many rebellions in the dynasty, 18 provinces voted to break away from the dynasty, ending the imperial period and the Qing dynasty. Later, Sun Yat-sen was elected as the first president as the Republican era of China began in 1912. And on the left is a picture of the Boxer Rebellion, and the right is the picture of the President Sun Yat-sen. And these are the sites and sources I used for Shang Dynasty, Zhou Dynasty, Qing Dynasty, Han Dynasty, Sui Dynasty, Tang Dynasty, Song Dynasty, Yuan Dynasty, and then the last two, Ming Dynasty and Qing Dynasty. Thank you for watching. Bye!